This is the Reolink Argus 4 Pro, one of the most advanced wireless security cameras available right now, with dual lenses, full colour night vision without the need for a spotlight, and it doesn't even need a hub. Now, a couple of months back I reviewed the Reolink Duo 3, a similar format dual lens camera which was my first introduction to a full PoE system, but I recognise that not everyone has the ability to drill Ethernet cables throughout their house, which is why I've always been a big fan of wireless camera systems. So when Reolink announced the Argus 4 Pro, I was delighted. It has all of the benefits that the dual lens system had with the Duo 3, whilst also having the additional benefit of being completely wireless and therefore a much less destructive process to set it up. Now, as a point here, Reolink do both a Pro and a non-Pro version of the Argus 4, and today's episode is specifically about the Pro version. There are a few key differences, but largely they're quite similar. The only real big differences are that the Pro has a much better low light capability through a wider aperture and something called ColorX technology for full colour night vision without any IR or spotlight, which we'll come back to. But it's also got a 30% bigger battery than the standard version too, so it definitely has some benefits. But both of them have their key selling point for me, which is the dual lens setup, which makes it look a bit like a fish's head. But I'm a big fan of this because it creates an absolutely massive wide-angle image, 180 degrees in total, and it does this all without distortion that you'd normally get if you tried to achieve this with a single lens. What this in turn means is that people throughout the entire view are clear and unwarped in any way, and if anything, this dual lens setup makes both this and the Duo 3 some of the best wide-angle security cameras you can buy right now. Looking at the quality, there's a good amount of detail throughout the entire image, and although it's not 100% perfect along that stitch, it does a very good job of patching the two images from both lenses into that single ultra-wide view with very little distortion along the centre. Of course, the distortion does get a bit worse for subjects who get particularly close. But if you've got it mounted correctly, then people won't get close enough for this to happen. I had to literally get the ladder out and stick my face right in front of it before it noticeably turned me into a Cyclops. Now, as much as I love these dual lenses and how powerful it makes the Argus 4 Pro, there is one downside to this setup that would normally be apparent, and that's battery life. Powering two high-resolution lenses and stitching them together into one image should take its toll on the battery life, but I've found so far that the battery life of the Argus 4 Pro has actually exceeded my expectations despite being a relatively small unit. And I think there's a good reason for this, and it's down to the lack of IR LEDs for night vision, but again, hold that thought, we're coming back to that shortly. But ultimately though, as this is such a wide-angle camera, it's very likely this will see a lot more activations and triggers than other cameras with narrower fields of view, which will obviously affect how long the battery will last for on this camera, especially in high traffic areas, which is exactly why Reolink have made this compatible with a solar panel and why they actually sell one in one of the packages you can buy of the Argus 4 Pro. The solar panel is extremely useful in this respect because without it, if you've got this camera in a high traffic area, you'll probably only get a month or so of use out of it before you're scrambling back up that ladder to Cyclops Central to try and awkwardly plug in a power bank to charge it by the USB-C port on the rear. It's either that, or you have to take it down and then you lose all your security for the duration that you're charging it for. And as you can appreciate, both situations are less than ideal, so the solar panel goes a long way in minimising or completely negating the need to manually charge your Argus 4. Obviously, that depends on the weather, and here in the UK we only get about 3 days of summer, so there's that to consider. One thing I'll say though is that whereas I do have a bit of a thing for integrated panels on cameras, the separate solar panel setup that Reolink have opted for allows for much more flexibility. It means that you can have the camera undercover, out of the way, with the solar panel mounted on top of your roof, for example, a good distance away from the actual camera, facing the completely opposite direction. And that makes the most of the sun, something which integrated systems don't allow you to do. Whichever the way the camera's facing is the way the solar panel's facing. So I thought it might not be as pretty but it's unquestionably more functional. Another functional addition on the Argus 4 Pro is the Wi-Fi 6 compatibility. This is super important because when you load up a live view on this camera, it's actually really snappy despite the size of the image. When on the same Wi-Fi network, it loads up in just 1.12 seconds, and when my phone is on 4G mobile data, it loads up in 5.32 seconds with the resolution on the highest setting, which is slower than I'd like it to be for 4G connectivity. So setting the resolution to stream slightly lower helps with this when on 4G. And it then loads up in 1.56 seconds, which is extremely respectable given that my phone's on 4G. It's quite remarkable for an image of this size and dual lenses in my opinion, and it's definitely down to the fact that it connects straight to the network via Wi-Fi 6. Of course, you need a wireless network that can actually make use of that connectivity, so there is that to consider too. But all of these features are nothing compared to what I think is the show stealer for this camera, and that's the night vision capabilities. What you're seeing on screen now is not in the daytime. It's actually taken at 9 PM at night using Realink's new ColorX night vision. This has to be the best color night vision I've seen on a security camera, and it sets itself apart from competitors with this feature. Not by a bit, but from my experience, by a hell of a lot. So I thought I'd push it a little bit further and come back a few hours later in the dead of night to really see how it performed. And no, that's not the Grim Reaper walking towards the camera, that's my best dressing gown.
Where the camera actually is, I think it's up there somewhere. Would you look at that? That is crazy.
Now what you need to appreciate is what's even more impressive is that the fact that that is completely spotlight free. It's only using the sensors in the camera, which is insane. It's only using the ambient light. Now as a quick note, it actually has 3 spotlights on the cameras and illuminates a particularly wide area because of it, but these aren't necessary at all for recording at night, as you can see, so long as there's some sort of ambient light in the vicinity. On any other camera I've tried, you need to use spotlights to get even close to this level of color night vision, and that would be with limited range too. There is one trade-off here, in that if you didn't want to have color night vision, well, tough luck, because Realink have decided, albeit unusually, to not include any form of IR night vision on the Argus 4 Pro. Do I need it? Well, no, absolutely not, especially when the color night vision is as good as it is. The picture would be no better with IR, and even with IR you get issues like IR blowout, causing a lot of detail to be lost when subjects get too close to the cameras, which you just don't get with the ColorX night vision. And as I mentioned earlier, not having the IR LEDs constantly on at night gives this an extra bit of boost to its battery. Realink suggests that this is up to 12 days of extra standby time, which, if true, is a massive amount of extra battery with this new ColorX night vision system, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see Realink build this into all of their other battery cameras in the near future. Now, I've covered the Realink app experience quite a bit before, but I'll touch up on it for those that haven't experienced it so far, or perhaps missed my previous Realink episode. Ultimately, it's straightforward, and actually Realink offer a few features as standard that I really like, such as the ability to run custom time lapses through it, which is super useful at the moment because I'm currently recording a 21-day time lapse of my garden for a review on the robot lawnmower from Mammotion, which also sweeps up any cuttings and debris and then deposits in a pile in the corner of the garden. You'll see that episode in a few weeks. But moving back to the Argus 4 Pro, it saves all of the footage it takes directly to the playback section, which is, again, straightforward to navigate, giving you a weekly or monthly view and being able to skip back and forth in the timeline. What's handy is on each clip, it shows the type of movement it detected by a little badge in the top corner, denoted by a little running man for a human, or paw for animal, or car for vehicle. It would be worth pointing out that there's a slight downside to consider here though, that the Argus 4 Pro doesn't actually have any internal storage to save these clips to. Instead, Realink have opted not to include this, but to instead include a micro SD card slot on the underside to add storage yourself. This isn't my favourite choice, but I guess it does offer some flexibility to the amount of storage that you want to use, and it also means that you aren't reliant on cloud subscriptions. You can essentially buy the product and use all of the features that it has without any ongoing costs. Reolink do offer a subscription plan, but thankfully, all this does is give you cloud backups for your footage and enables rich notifications simply by the fact it's going through the cloud. Now, I love how they haven't hidden important features behind a paywall, and it's one of the main reasons why Reolink are among my favourite brands for security cameras. But actually, on the flip side, the cloud subscription is actually very well priced, at only $4.99 a month for 5 cameras and 30 gig of cloud storage, which is quite a bit more, for quite a bit less than many competitors out there. I will say, though, that the AI is relatively minimal, but functional, and it does seem pretty accurate. As I mentioned, they've opted only for human, animal and vehicle detection, although you can set the sensitivity that the camera has for each type of movement, which is interesting. I don't think that's something I've seen before. But although the AI is relatively minimalistic, it does have one feature that I wish all security cameras had, and that's the motion mark setting. This creates a box around the motion that it's recording, highlighting the subject and making it clearer what the camera has actually detected. In my opinion, this offers a much more glanceable piece of information to see what the camera sees. This is actually quite helpful for checking for mistriggers, which then gives you the opportunity to perhaps add no detection zones if needed, if it keeps triggering in the wrong areas. But all in all, it's a rather simple software experience that hasn't really changed too much from the previous versions. It's largely the hardware in this update that's had the innovations. But with new innovations, obviously comes new prices. And these innovations in particular will set you back somewhat. Now, there's 2 options of the Argus 4 Pro specifically that you can buy, one with and one without the solar panel. Generally speaking, the package with the solar panel is about £20 more, so it's my absolute recommendation that you go for that, given my comments on the internal battery and the fact that it's powering 2 lenses. It's definitely worth having to save yourself the hassle and headache of having to clamber up a ladder to charge it every so often. But the version with the solar panel and its RRP is £219. Although, like almost everything, when I checked whilst writing this review, it was on a considerable discount, making it much more affordable. So I would advise checking the link out below to see if it's still available on that discount. But at its RRP, it's definitely a bit more than I expected. But then again, it is among some of the more advanced Wi-Fi cameras I've tested, and with that prestige comes the additional cost. But the real question is it worth that price? And, well, I think it probably is, especially if you've got the need for some of the particular benefits it has, such as the 180-degree undistorted wide view, or perhaps you want a more inconspicuous camera at night. I've found none more inconspicuous than this. Because it's not got IR LEDs on it, and you can use it without the spotlight, it basically makes it invisible to the naked eye at night, and unspottable if you're trying to be sneaky about your recordings. But despite this, it still keeps up or exceeds other cameras for the quality of its night vision, which is amazing. It's a niche situation, but one that's only made possible by this camera, and it's the only one I know that can do it, and certainly with as wide a picture as it has as well. I guess all in all, it's a great product. And whereas there are a few little things that I've picked on, such as the more bare bones AI and lack of onboard memory, those really are the only 2 things that I have to say are a consideration. The rest of the experience is fantastic. It's exemplary. And if you're looking for the widest view possible, night vision without lights, or a blindingly fast connection speed with Wi-Fi 6, this is one of the best options out there for those features, without a doubt. What do you guys think of the Argus 4 Pro? Does its unique night vision capabilities tickle your pickle? Or do you think the price is a little bit too high for these groundbreaking features? Let me know what you think in the comments below of Reolink's newest device, so we can all have a good chin wag about it. But if you found today's episode helpful in deciding whether the Argus 4 Pro is for you or not, then please return the favour and hit that thumbs up and subscribe. But I'll see you guys back for another episode of Stu's Reviews soon.